Hello, welcome back to Deep Learning with the Wolf. I'm Diana Wolf Torres, and today I'm here with Alex Wolf Torres. And what we might do before this technology might really be viable. So, what are your thoughts? Are we ready for flying cars?
Yeah, I think the big thing about flying cars is there's two interconnected issues that make them, in the conventional form of like a car that you drive but in the sky, make that notion very impractical, if not physically impossible. First and foremost, people already have enough issues driving cars in two dimensions. Like, I'm certain everyone has seen a driver and they're like, well, why the heck did they do that? That could have caused an accident. People already have enough issues with cars in two dimensions. for a for a car in three dimensions, I think one of the big things would have to be that the car would almost have to do most of the driving itself, not only just for stability, but for getting into the second point, the restrictions, especially with airspace near airports. So, as an example, some projects at the university they work with drones, but in order to fly those drones, they need to hire a certified drone pilot to come in because of how restrictive the airspace is around the airport. And the thing is, I'm certain that everyday people would either not know or might just ignore those restrictions, which would be an absolute nightmare for aviation. Which comes back to the idea of the car basically driving itself, so it would know, like, okay, need to avoid this airspace, or like possibly having like highways in the sky. Like, okay, I'll follow this route in the sky, such that I don't go over restricted areas. And I think at the end of the day, that basically gets us to the idea of like a sky taxi, which again, it flies along a predetermined route rather than being something you can kind of just fly anywhere. Since actually a third issue that just came to mind is people are already fussy enough about like drones over their property, and rightfully so. Imagine like something as large as a flying car going over a property, and that would almost certainly cause like political and even more logistical hurdles already.
Yeah, so you have a lot to unpack there. So we'll go through them one at a time. So, with regards to licensing, so I was digging deep into this issue today. There is one company that says they may have a flying car ready in a year's time. And they were talking about the fact that people would not only need a driver's license, but maybe some form of pilot's license before they could operate the vehicle, which does make sense to me because I hear about these and I worry somebody's going to hit my house. So
Yeah, exactly.
cars would end up flying over people's houses, and then you have all these privacy concerns. So, do I want a car flying over my house when I'm in my backyard enjoying time with my family? Yeah, no, probably not. There's a neighbor a block over who recently got a drone, unfortunately. And when they fly that, it just sounds like a swarm of really angry bees, but louder than bees normally are. Just very, very loud and very angry bees. And it's so loud that I have to close the doors and the windows and retreat inside until the darn thing runs out of battery. So if that's a little drone, as I understand it, these flying cars are very, very big drones.
Yeah, that's some of the concepts that have been floating around for a flying car are basically just like a quadcopter, except with even more blades in order to provide all the necessary lift. And I think that ends up just kind of being an alternative, like to like a helicopter, or as you mentioned with a pilot license. One of the things I've seen that was a flying car that kind of made sense was it was basically a car that could turn into a plane. So you'd like drive it to an airport and then take off. But yeah, I think you're entirely right that noise pollution would very quickly become yet another hurdle to entry, since no one would want those things constantly buzzing above their house. Not just the privacy, but for the noise, for the safety risk. Yeah.
Yeah. There was an interesting article I read a few days back about Amazon delivery drones. So, near an Amazon warehouse in Texas, they were trying out this concept of like, okay, someone's ordered cookies, like they actually specifically picked foodstuffs. Let's try delivering the cookies by delivery drone. And dog food. Some small dog food items were the ones that were mentioned, not big heavy bags, but little dog treats. Okay. So these were items they delivered by drones. They were so noisy. The people of the town banded together to have the drones sent away. So the drones can no longer fly in that town, even though it was just a test program on the part of Amazon, because the people were so annoyed by the sound of the drones, and it made the birds go away. So it was a noise pollution issue for them there. So yeah, that's when I was diving deep into this, I was wondering how the car manufacturers, or the VTOL, these vertical takeoff and lift manufacturers, I guess we'll need a new name for the flying cars, how they're dealing with the issue. And apparently they're trying to come up with a quieter way for these uh, giant mega drones, I guess, to operate in order to make the blades quieter. But yeah, that would be an issue if they're going to sound like giant angry bees, which was the expression I used, and it was the exact expression used by the people of that town in Texas. Giant swarms of angry bees.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, it sort of boils down to what is the problem a flying car is trying to solve. There's a few things you could argue here, but I think the fundamental one is people don't like sitting in traffic. It's like, okay, I don't want to sit in traffic. I could just fly straight to where I need to go. It'd be faster. I wouldn't have to wait in traffic. At the end of the day, they've talked about all of these problems that make it infeasible. And as you briefly mentioned, if everyone had a flying car, then we would just have traffic but in the sky. And if the problem we're trying to solve is like traffic and congestion on roads for people trying to get to point A to B, we came up with a solution to that a long time ago. It's trains. I remember a lot of these throughout like the 2010s and early 2020s, people trying to make like novel transportation systems. Like the first thing that comes to mind is like Hyperloop, and I know I remember seeing this thing, which is like a train designed to be built over roads to try and save space. And I think a lot of these just ended up being a worse way to build like a train or a tram or a subway. It's quite interesting, really. Like the concept of like mass transit of people, I think, is one that's already solved. It's just the implementation of that is the continued issue.
So maybe the future isn't so much in flying cars, although that is what I'm writing about tonight in Deep Learning with the Wolf. But maybe the future is doing better with the technologies that we already have.
Yeah. And it's interesting because like stuff like flying cars, it's glamorous, it's flashy. Everyone knows about like has like is it like Meet the Robinsons, like going with like the retro futuristic view of like we'll have like flying cars by 2030, that sort of thing.
Are you thinking of the Jetsons?
Jetsons, there it is. But at the end of the day, it's the not as flashy solutions that are the ones that at least I believe could have a bigger impact. But of course, getting the momentum, like the motivation, the funding, the public interest in those solutions is such a complex issue. I don't feel qualified, and I don't even think I could give a reasonable idea of how to even start.
Yeah. Well, I think we're just about at 15 minutes, which is how long we said we would talk. And I know you have to get to a night class, but
Yes.
I think we've actually given this a really good discussion to go with the deep dive I'm doing tonight into flying cars. And I like the turn that our conversation has taken, and kind of taken the whole topic and flipped it a little bit and looked at it from a very unique angle.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And that's
So
what.
thank you. Yeah. Go
Sorry,
ahead.
you go. Okay. I think it's at the end of the day, it's one of the main things in the engineering school is making sure that if you're trying to solve a problem, first of all, you need to know what problem you're trying to solve. Like you can give a solution, but what problem is that solution trying to solve? And secondly, once you know what problem you're trying to solve, is that even the right problem to be solving? Is there something else that's creating that problem that you could solve first? And often that line of thinking, I've heard it described as like asking why 5 times, can lead to like perspectives and like angles to issues that you previously wouldn't even think of.
Yeah. That's really good. So as we end, I'll be at NVIDIA GTC next week in San Jose for anybody who's going and wants to meet up. I know you are also planning on being there, but still finalizing your schedule of which days you're going to be there, because you also have finals next week.
Yep.
So yeah, so if people want to meet up with us in person and talk with us about flying cars or engineering or robots or whatever it is they want to talk with us about next week in San Jose, would be the place to do it. So thanks so much for your time tonight. And this has been Deep Learning with the Wolf.
Of course, thanks for having me. Have a good
Yes.
night.
Thank you. Okay. Good night.